Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim. Jonathan Bailor here with Carrie Brown in studio in Seattle. Carrie, how you doing today?
It is a great day.
It's a great day. And we're going to pick up just where we left off last week. Last week, Carrie, if I recall, we were talking about the fat metabolism system.
Yes, you were fiddling with my fat metabolism.
Fiddling away. And for listeners who are just joining us here in episode 3, the fat metabolism system is, think about it like your respiratory system or your circulatory system, but it's all about your body composition. It's a collection of hormones and neurological signals that helps your body either keep you thin or keep you heavy. And we're going to work on unclogging our fat metabolism system so that our body automatically keeps us slim, like, you know, those naturally thin people we all know.
Okay.
All right. So
you're going to help me get back to being the naturally thin person I used to be.
Well, you know, the body's natural state is one of health and not being overweight. I mean, think about it, you know, as we were coming along our evolutionary path, if we were designed to be overweight and sick, you know, we would have gotten eaten by lions and our species would have died off a long time ago. So our body wants us to be healthy and fit. We just need to give it the right fuel to do that, put it in the right situation to do that, and then it will take care of the rest for us.
All right, because I for sure definitely want to get back to that place.
Get back to the happy place.
Get back to the happy place.
So, fat metabolism system. And what the fat metabolism system does fundamentally is it tries to keep us around our set point weight. Term we introduced last week. We've all experienced this set point weight. You know, it's why you can get the flu and you lose 20 pounds and then you get better and you don't change your eating or exercise habits and somehow exactly 20 pounds comes back. Like your body wants you to weigh a certain weight.
I'm sitting here wondering if I should share my old set point weight. That's kind of scary, but
well, I think you're ready, Carrie.
I will. Okay, so my set point weight was, well, around 166, 168. And it didn't seem to matter what I ate or what I didn't eat or how much I exercised or didn't exercise. It didn't budge. It just didn't matter what I did. That's where it stayed. It's
actually sort of a funny example. Even individuals who struggle with obesity and overweight, if you think about it, there are people that weigh 450 pounds, but there's no one that weighs 4,500 pounds. And I know that might sound like a kind of a silly example, Carrie, but you know, if it really just is about calories in, calories out, why isn't it that overeating doesn't cause us to weigh 1,000 pounds, 2,000 pounds? Well, again, that's because our body is always fundamentally trying to bring us back to homeostasis or a point of equilibrium. The problem is that point of equilibrium, or what researchers call the set point weight, has risen in overweight individuals. And we need to bring that back down. We need to fix our biology. And the fun thing, Carrie, is once we understand our set point weight, think about it like a thermostat for our body, fitness and health becomes very exciting. Because imagine if, just like today, it seems like we're fighting against our body to lower this set point weight. No matter what we do, it's like our body is fighting and fighting and fighting to keep us heavier. What if our body fought to automatically keep us slimmer? What if we had a lower set point weight?
Well, the interesting thing is that I have, as you know, Jonathan, been living the smarter science of slim for a little while, and I'm very happy to announce that my set point weight is now around 154 instead of 168. So I know from experience that it's absolutely possible to do that, and now I just stay at 154 no matter what I do, no matter, I got down and I've just stayed there.
And the question, of course, I'm sure you're wondering, is how do you lower your set point even further? And what we'll find, I want to cover a little bit of background on the set point, provide some really interesting studies to verify it, because again, we're brainwashed with calories in, calories out. We've got to reboot our minds. We need some data to back that up, but we will talk about how we lower it in brief. The higher the quality of the food we eat and the higher the quality of the exercise we get, the more of a hormonal shift we make in our body and the lower our set point weight falls. So as people start to live the smarter science of slim, they usually ease their way into it. They start to see some changes. They like it. They further increase the quality of their eating and their exercise. Set point falls further, and they like the results.
Well, I can't believe that I just announced my weight to the whole world. But anyway, there it is.
There it is. Well, and of course, we'll talk about this much more later. But here at Living the Smarter Science of Slim, we're not really focused on weight, right? According to my body mass index, I am obese, and I actually have about 9% body fat, so I'm not obese. However, according to my body mass index and according to my weight versus my height, I am obese. I'm not obese. Weight is not the be-all, end-all. Health, fitness, how we look, how we feel about ourselves is the be-all, end-all. And on that note, let's get to some science about the set point. And actually here, we're here in Seattle, Washington, and one of the premier investigators around the set point is Dr. Weigel, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, over at the University of Washington. Puts it really well. He says, obesity is not a disorder of body weight regulation. Most obese patients regulate their weight appropriately about an elevated set point weight. So in other words, a heavier person's set point weight keeps them at that higher weight, much like a naturally thin person's lower set point weight keeps them at that lower weight. We all have a set point. The issue is how low or how high it is.
Can you explain how my set point is now 14 pounds less than it was?
I absolutely can, and I will get to that, Carrie. But I want to keep you in suspense for just a second because I further want to drive home the importance of focusing on, again, it's not about eating less and exercising more. It's about changing our set point weight. And this is really important because Dr. Fran over at Oxford University notes that, we really shouldn't be surprised that dieting is difficult because it is a fight against mechanisms which have evolved over many millions of years precisely to minimize its effects. Now, let's think about that for a second. Our body doesn't want us to store a bunch of fat quickly or to lose a bunch of weight quickly. Our body, just like it tries to keep our blood pressure at a regular rate, and it tries to keep our heart rate at a regular rate, and our breathing constant, our body wants us to stay at about the same weight. So when we try to override that, it's almost like a violent act. Like we're trying to override what our body wants. And Carrie, you and I both know we generally don't win battles against our body.
So is that why living the smarter science of slim has been just staggeringly easy compared to going on any number of traditional diets?
Carrie, you're exactly right. With the smarter science of slim, we fundamentally want to work with our body. We want to optimize our hormones, and we want to really just convince our body to automatically regulate us around a slimmer set point. Now, contrast that to eating less and exercising more. We're saying, body, I'm going to rip calories out of you. Because eating less, that's just starvation. Exercising more, again, that's just basically the same as starvation, just doing it a different way. We're trying to force our body down. Think about it, Carrie, actually a bit like trying to force yourself to stay awake. It's not going to work. Your body needs a certain amount of sleep, and we can force ourselves to stay awake. We can take a bunch of stimulants, but there's always side effects. And in the long run, the body wins out. So a much more promising and a much more healthy and a much more long-term approach is to find out the way our body works and to optimize that. And that's what we can do. And it's all about our hormones. It's all about our set point. And if you don't mind, Carrie, I've got a few studies here I'd love to share to really illustrate just how powerful the set point is.
But if I understand it correctly, you're saying that we are working, that living the smarter science of slim is working with our body to naturally get there instead of forcing us to get there. Is that what you're saying?
It is, think of eating less and exercising more at being effective at enabling us to temporarily shed weight. However, the body will then counteract that. Everything about our biology will work to counteract eating less and exercising more. Because again, our body doesn't want to starve. In fact, there's been studies, we'll talk about these in detail in a second, Carrie, where even if you really want to gain a lot of weight, That's not particularly easy. Most people gain weight gradually over time due to hormonal changes. If you want to gain 20 pounds in 2 weeks, your body won't let you do that. It will automatically regulate you back down. So here with the Smarter Science of Slim, again, it's about fiddling with the hormonal knobs in our body to change and to work with and to optimize and to heal our body rather than to try to force it in one direction or another.
It's interesting you say how gradual weight gain is, because I always felt that my ideal weight when I felt the best was when I was 119 pounds. And it took years for me to creep up to 166, 168. I mean, I didn't even notice it, really.
Exactly.
It's interesting you say we don't gain a lot of weight very rapidly, but I don't expect to get down to 119 pounds overnight. And the other interesting thing is that it's, like you mentioned earlier, it is not about the weight, because even though I've only lost 14 pounds, if you looked at the way my clothes fit me now, or looked at the way I look rather than looking at numbers on a scale, you'd think I would have lost a lot more weight. You'd think there would have been a bigger drop in number. There hasn't been, but the way I look and the comments I'm getting and the way my clothes are fitting, there's the difference.
Carrie, I have to share a kind of an embarrassing story here to echo that point. Recently, my lovely wife and I went on a little vacation to Mexico, and I have weighed 200 pounds, my set point weight, for probably, I don't know, the last 7 years. However, over the past 3 years, I've really taken my smarter eating and smarter exercise strategy to the next level, really increasing the quality of both those as much as I can. And I have noticed a difference in my waist. For example, I'm about 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. For most of my life, I had a 34-inch waist. And recently, I've actually gone down to a 31.5-inch waist. And I didn't think about that when I was packing my suitcase. So I took my old bathing suit, got to Mexico, got on the beach, was quite excited, saw the beautiful sun and surf there, put the bathing suit on, the swim trunks on, proceeded to sprint my way into the ocean, and then the first wave came and wardrobe malfunction.
And then all the ladies on the beach were excited.
Except for one, and that would be my wife. And so yeah, absolutely. I weigh the exact same, but I have seen a dramatic shift as well in my body composition, which is shocking because I am eating more and exercising less. But one other point you mentioned there, Carrie, that I do want to talk about, and that's weight gain being gradual. And some listeners may have experienced weight gain not being gradual. And there are times in our life where we can see pretty significant and pretty quick weight gain, but you'll notice those are always times that have to do with massive and quick hormonal change. Think about pregnancy, think about menopause. When we see dramatic changes in our hormonal balance, we do see dramatic changes in our weight. Now, what's again so exciting about eating and exercising smarter is we can make dramatic hormonal changes which help us drop that fat rather than gain that fat. It's not about dramatic, I'm eating dramatically less or I'm exercising dramatically more. It's about dramatic hormonal change.
It's funny, the other times that you also notice dramatic weight loss, like you talked about pregnancy and other things that can cause dramatic weight gain, there's also times where the reverse is true. And I'm thinking particularly if people get divorced, there's this massive stress.
Exactly.
And I've seen people lose 2 stone. What's that in American? 28 pounds.
I don't know.
28 pounds in like overnight.
Yep.
Because of stress. And that's another thing that always made me question the whole calories in, calories out. Because I'm like, okay, nothing changed in their eating or their exercise, but they've lost a massive amount of weight. There must be something else going on that caused their body to do that. So it can't just be what we eat versus how much we exercise.
And Carrie, you actually made me think of a third example of where we see significant weight gain or even weight loss, and that has to do with medication. So 2 of the most common examples, actually 3. So when people quit smoking, eating and exercise doesn't change. clinical studies have shown time and time again their weight changes. And people, that actually may have to do a bit with insulin sensitivity studies show. Second example is antidepressants or similar drugs such as those. Many, many people will not change anything about how much they're eating, how much they're exercising, go on some sort of a antidepressant type medication, gain 10 to 12 pounds in a month or two. Third is insulin. Any type 2 diabetic who has began insulin therapy will tell you without any changes to how much they eat or how much they exercise, they gain weight. And we'll actually cover some studies about this in later podcasts. But again, folks, all about hormones, and the way we control hormones is through the quality of our food, the quality of our exercise. And the reason that's important is it unclogs our fat metabolism system, drops our set point weight, and enables our bodies to behave more like they're supposed to, or more like the bodies of naturally thin people, keeping us healthy and fit long term.
This is one of the things, when I read your chapter in the book, Calories In, Calories Out, this is when it started to make sense to me that it was actually possible that your strategy was the one that actually worked. You know, hormones and stress and all these other things that caused weight change without your food intake or exercising. Now it suddenly starts to feel like maybe he's right. Maybe there is something to this.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that, because we definitely do need, it needs to click. We need an alternative. We can't just be expected to say, oh, well, clearly let's eat more and exercise less, smarter. We have to have a reason to believe there's a difference. And to that end, let's start covering some of the science supporting the set point, because it may sound like this is an interesting theory, but the good news is it's actually not a theory. It's been proven time and time again. So if you don't mind, Carrie, and you can reel me in if I get too scientific here. But
hey, if you get too geeky, I'm reeling.
You're reeling. So a couple studies. The first, I think, are fascinating. They were done at the University of Cincinnati. They involved animals. Now, Carrie, researchers would do reverse liposuction. They would actually surgically add fat to rats' bodies and then observe the rats as, get this, they would automatically burn off all of the fat that was surgically added.
The rats would? The
rats would automatically burn off exactly the amount of fat. In addition to that, they did a similar study where they took rats and they did liposuction on these rats, and they sucked fat out of their bodies, and the rats automatically ate more until they replaced, and I'm quoting the research now, I'm quoting the study, exactly the mass of fat that was taken. So animals with body fat surgically added automatically burned more fat until their body fat returned to its set point, and animals with body fat surgically removed did the converse to maintain their set point.
So liposuction is not the answer for us either?
No, liposuction, well, again, think about it in terms of we're not doing anything to solve the problem. The problem is not that there's an abundance of fat on the body. That's a symptom of a problem. The problem is what's going on in the body that's causing it to store all that excess fat. And that's what we need to solve. We need to solve that biological clog.
So if you have liposuction, you still need to change the way you live your life if you are not going to regain all of that fat.
Absolutely, Carrie. I mean, once you get that fat taken off your body, I mean, again, think about it like the clogged sink analogy we talked about last week. Sure, you can dip a coffee mug into a clogged sink and scoop some water and throw it out to the side, but you didn't do anything about the clog. The water level is just going to rise back up unless you get that clog out.
Got it.
So let's talk about some other studies where, and this is, again, the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's talk about people who are trying to gain weight. So in many, they call them intentional overeating or overfeeding studies, every single one of these studies show three things, Carrie. One, everyone gains less weight predicted than calories in, calories out. So, if they ate, there's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. So if they ate 35,000 extra calories, no one gained exactly 10 pounds. Biology doesn't work like math, it works like biology. Second thing, every single study shows is that they stop gaining weight completely at a certain point. This goes back to our early comments about there's no person that weighs 4,500 pounds. The body will automatically regulate you at some point. It just happens too late for some of us. The third thing every single study showed is that as soon as the study ended, people returned to their original weight automatically when they stopped being force-fed.
That's amazing. always surprising, when we spend time together and you tell me all this stuff. It's just so surprising. Nobody's ever put this together before. Nobody's ever added 2 and 2 and got 4 before now.
Well, we're adding it up here, Carrie. And we're gonna break it down. I got one more study. This is actually, I like to call this the ultimate set point study. And I get so excited about it here because it's such a creative setup. In this type of study, they're twin studies. So researchers got sets of twins. So the reason this is so interesting, Carrie, is our set point is determined primarily by 2 things, our genetics and our hormones. And identical twins have exactly the same genetic makeup. So we can isolate that component and talk strictly about hormones. And what researchers did in this study is they would take different sets of twins. So let's say we have the Smith twins and we have the Thomas twins. And they would overfeed all 4 of those people the exact same amount. And they wanted to see, how would weight gain work? Would all of them gain exactly the same weight? Would they all gain different amount of weights? How would that work? Well, what all of these studies show is that the twins, so like the Smith twins, would both gain the same amount of weight. And the Thomas twins would both gain the same amount of weight. But the different sets of twins, so like where the Smith twins may have gained 2 pounds each, the Thomas twins may have gained like 8 pounds each. Everyone was eating the same quantity of calories and getting the same amount of exercise. But because they had different set points, they gained different amount of weights. And because the twins had the same set points, they gained the exact same amount of weight.
That is fascinating.
So summing this all up, Dr. Friedman at Rockefeller University tells us that the simplistic notion that weight can be controlled by deciding to eat less and exercise more is at odds with substantial scientific evidence illuminating a precise and powerful biologic system that maintains body weight within a relatively narrow range. One more quote here by one other doctor. This is Dr. Havel over at the University of California. Carrie, body weight is tightly regulated over relatively long periods of time. Even after large alterations of body fat resulting from restriction of energy intake or dieting, body weight and fat stores tend to return to the pre-intervention levels. So our body doesn't want us to starve. To lose weight, we need to lower that relatively narrow range researchers refer to, where our powerful biological system operates. And to do that, we need to talk about what causes that set point to rise in the first place.
Well, if what you've just shared doesn't give a huge amount of hope to everyone out there listening to this, that they can control, they can get back to where they want to be, they can control their weight. If that doesn't give them hope that that's possible, then I don't know what else would.
I hope it gives them hope. And I want to be very clear here. It's not magic. I mean, we do have to do something. It's not eat more of what you're currently eating or do less of your current exercise routine. We have to eat more high quality foods and do less but higher quality exercise. But we all know nothing in this world's free. The good news, though, is that now, and I'll tell you this, Carrie, back from my personal trainer days, we're not struggling because we're not trying hard enough. That's not the issue. We're trying plenty hard. The problem is we've just been given bad information. So if you're willing to spend just a bit of time, bit of effort, now you actually have some science that will work.
I'm so excited about this.
So before we wrap up this week, Carrie, I don't want to leave everyone hanging, and I want to cover a bit on how our set point rises. And in the next podcast, we'll talk about how we can start to lower it, which we've already alluded to from a high level. But how does our set point rise? Well, again, you're going to keep hearing this word over and over again. It's all about hormones. And the 2 most commonly talked about in reference to our set point, again, there's lots, but let's simplify it, are insulin and leptin. Have you heard about these hormones, Carrie?
I haven't really heard about leptin, but everyone's heard about insulin.
So yeah, insulin from a high level determines whether we're storing or burning body fat. Cover it in detail in later podcasts, but from a high level, that's what it does. And leptin regulates how much food we eat, how much energy we burn, and the amount of body fat specified by our set point. It's really kind of a master hormone in terms of our set point. So let's assume we're unclogged. So again, going back to that sink analogy from earlier podcasts, we're unclogged, our body's working appropriately. Okay?
Okay.
So when our weight starts to rise, rise above our set point, a feedback loop begins. So hormonal signals start to tell our metabolism to go up, our appetite to go down, and our body fat gets burned. So at any point in time, Carrie, we're either storing or burning body fat. If we store a bit of body fat, our body says, well, don't be hungry, speed up metabolism, and body fat gets burned via hormonal signals. And we stay at our set point without really trying. Now, when things go off the rails, it gets a little ugly. So when things go off the rail, when our hormones aren't being sent or received properly, we eat, we gain some body fat, insulin is ignored, leptin is ignored, we have insulin and leptin resistance, our metabolism doesn't really change, our appetite doesn't really change, we don't get full, so we don't burn any body fat, and in fact, we gain even more body fat because we eat even more, and then these hormones keep getting secreted more and more and more, and we end up with this mass of hormones in our body, which clogs up this cycle and prevents us from automatically keeping us in balance and causes that set point to creep up.
But the whole thing is driven by hormones, that's what you're saying. So if we can learn how to regulate our hormones in a healthy way, everything else will just start to work how it should.
Exactly. I couldn't put it any better myself. A raised set point or an elevated set point is very simply abnormal levels of hormones making our metabolism think abnormal levels of body fat are normal. And the good news, Carrie, we don't have to, get PhDs in biochemistry. We need to start thinking of food as a control system for hormones and exercise as a control system for hormones. It's not about calories. I don't care how many calories you burn on the treadmill. That doesn't matter. What matters is what your exercise does to your hormone levels so we can affect this set point weight, so we can restore this virtuous cycle, and so our body can behave as it wants to, and that's to keep us healthy and fit long term.
That's incredible. And as I said just a little while ago, the more time I spend with you listening to this stuff, the more hope I have that 119 pounds is going to happen and it's not going to be difficult. But even if it doesn't, even if I don't get to that number, I'm going to look like I have.
That's absolutely right, Carrie. And the key thing is that while 119 pounds may not be doable or may not even be necessary, technically, if you just stopped eating and you exercised obsessively, eventually you would get to 119 pounds, but 119 pounds of what?
Right.
119 pounds tired and with all your muscle burnt off and, crabby, and no one wants that. It would be much better to be at 130, 135, 140 to look like you're at 119 pounds, to feel great, and to enjoy food and to not be living in the gym all day, every day.
I remember actually one of your friends commenting that they didn't believe your wife weighed 150 or whatever it is she weighs, 140, because she was tiny, but she weighed 140. How was that possible? And I think you've just explained that right there.
Absolutely. Well, and we all hear, we've heard this, and again, it's somewhat true, this whole muscle weighs more than fat. Muscle doesn't weigh, a pound of muscle weighs the same as a pound of fat, but muscle is about 5 times smaller than fat. So if you shed 10 pounds of fat off your body and simultaneously develop 10 pounds of lean tissue, you will look amazingly smaller, amazingly tighter, as you would say, you won't have any wobbly bits. And however, your weight will not change at all. So to close up, I want to do a quote from a researcher here from the University of Wisconsin, Dr. Kesey, who says, if our goal is substantial and sustainable weight loss, a more promising approach would be one based upon a strategy of directly altering the set point. The physiologic adjustments that ordinarily act to resist weight change would instead facilitate the achievement and subsequent maintenance of a lower weight. Carrie, that maintenance is so important because we've talked about this before. Studies show that long-term, eating less, exercising more, fails 95.4% of the time. We have to enable our body and enable our lifestyle to perpetuate any health and fitness success we have, because I'm not here for the short term. I don't want to yo-yo. It's terrible for our health. It's terrible for our mental well-being.
And that really is why I was perfectly happy to share my weight, because I've learned that it's not the number that's important, it's your body composition that's important. And so sharing my weight publicly is now, it just doesn't matter.
I love that. I love that we're healing our minds, we're healing our bodies, we're letting go of all this baggage that's been put upon us about, weighing a certain weight or eating a certain number of calories or doing a certain number of exercises. And fundamentally, instead of fighting against our raised set point by working harder, we can eat and exercise smarter, we can unclog, we can lower our set point, and we can enable our fat metabolism system to burn body fat for us automatically, just like naturally thin people do. Any closing comments, Carrie?
You give the world hope.
Give the world hope. Well, and I just tip my hat to all the researchers that enabled this to be powerful. I'm just the messenger. So thank you so much for joining us this week on Living the Smarter Science of Slim. Jonathan Bailor, Carrie